What if I told you the money in your bank account doesn't really exist? The numbers on your screen, they're not backed by anything you can touch. Not gold, not silver, not even paper most of the time. Just trust, a fragile promise shared by billions. For centuries, that promise rested on something real. You could hand over paper and walk out with gold, real, heavy, shining gold. Your money was a claim to something real. But one day that deal vanished. Governments broke the link quietly, completely. Yet we kept believing. Paychecks came, stores stayed open, life went on. But the rules had changed. Why did the world give up something so valuable? What did it gain and what did it lose? Gold, the word itself, feels ancient. Empires rose for it, wars burned for it. Pharaohs wore it, pirates killed for it. Gold wasn't just beauty, it was certainty. You couldn't print more of it, you couldn't fake it. A piece of gold was the same in London, New York, or Beijing. That made it perfect for something humanity always struggled with: trust. In the 1800s, Britain turned that trust into a system. 1 pound equaled a precise weight of gold. Simple, predictable. Trade boomed. The idea spread. France joined, Germany joined, the US joined. By the early 1900s, the gold standard ruled the modern world. Currencies were stable, inflation rare. You could plan decades ahead. For an industrializing world, gold was order in a storm. But every system cracks. Gold worked only when times were calm, when governments behaved, when wars stayed away. But history never stays calm for long. In 1914, Europe erupted. World War I consumed the continent. Nations drained gold reserves to survive. Paper money flooded in. The link between paper and metal snapped. Inflation followed like smoke after fire. When the war ended, the world tried to rebuild. But the gold was gone, spent or hidden. Britain returned to gold in 1925, pretending nothing changed. But everything had. The pound was overvalued. Factories closed. Workers paid the price. Then came 1929, the Great Depression. Banks failed. Families starved. People lined up, clutching paper that promised gold. But vaults were empty. Under gold's rules, governments couldn't print freely. Every dollar had to be matched by metal. The rule that once gave stability now strangled recovery. Prices fell. Wages collapsed. Hope vanished. In America, Roosevelt made a desperate move. He closed banks, banned gold hoarding, reset its price to $35 an ounce. Overnight, the dollar lost value, but the economy could breathe again. Others followed, unhooking from gold's grip. They discovered something dangerous but freeing. Without metal chains, they could act faster. Print, spend, rescue. Chaos, yes, but also life. Then came another war. Bigger, costlier. By 1945, the world was in ruins. Cities destroyed, nations broke. But one country stood rich in both industry and gold: the United States. It held nearly 3/4 of the world's supply. In 1944, 44 nations met at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Goal: rebuild and prevent another depression. The plan was bold. The US dollar would anchor the world, tied to gold at $35 an ounce. Other currencies would tie to the dollar. In theory, any government could exchange dollars for gold. The gold standard was reborn, but this time the world revolved around America. 2 new institutions were born, the IMF and the World Bank. Their mission: to lend, stabilize, and prevent collapse. For 2 decades, the system worked. Ships moved goods. The dollar flowed everywhere. Factories roared. Trade thrived. A dollar was as good as gold. They called it the golden age of capitalism. Wages rose, technology advanced. The promise of prosperity felt real again. But behind the shine, cracks formed. The US printed more dollars to fund wars, rebuild allies, fuel growth. Paper multiplied, gold didn't. By the late 1960s, the math failed. Foreign governments saw it. France demanded gold for its dollars. Shipments left Fort Knox. Reserves fell fast. By 1970, the world's trust was shaking. Too many dollars, not enough gold. The system that built stability was now collapsing under its own weight. And in 1971, one man would end it all, with a single speech that rewrote the world's money forever. August 15, 1971, a calm summer night in America. Families sit by their televisions, unaware history is seconds away from shifting. President Richard Nixon appears on the screen, his face serious, his voice measured. He says, "I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Just one sentence, but it detonates across the world economy. No more gold for dollars. No more anchor beneath the world's money. The gold standard, gone. In a single evening, the system that had guided global trade for generations is erased. People don't understand it yet. Banks stay open. Salaries keep coming. Life looks the same on the surface, but underneath everything has changed. For the first time in modern history, money has no physical limit. It becomes an idea, pure trust, pure faith. Nixon calls it a temporary measure, but temporary becomes permanent. The dollar, once a symbol of gold's reliability, now floats freely in the open sea of global markets. Currencies untether from their anchors. Exchange rates swing like waves. Some nations panic, others see opportunity. Britain lets the pound float. Japan races to adjust. France fumes. It had demanded its gold just a year before. The old world order built on metal begins to crumble. The new world built on confidence begins to rise. In the 1970s, governments discover their new superpower, printing money. They can now fight recessions, fund wars, and stimulate growth, all with the push of a button. No need to dig for gold. Just print, spend, repeat. At first it feels like magic, but magic always comes with a cost. Inflation surges, oil prices explode, the cost of living rises faster than wages. In the US, the dollar loses nearly half its value in a decade. Families watch prices climb week after week. A house that cost $20,000 now costs $40,000. Savings lose power. Trust wavers. Meanwhile, the Middle East becomes the center of power. Oil is the world's lifeblood, and it flows in dollars. The US strikes a quiet deal with Saudi Arabia. In exchange for protection and trade, oil will only be sold in dollars. This gives birth to the Petrodollar. Every nation that needs oil now needs US dollars too. The dollar, once backed by gold, is now backed by global demand. Its strength comes not from metal, but from the world's dependence. The system works, at least for those who built it. America gains the ability to borrow endlessly. Europe adjusts slowly, learning to play by new rules. Developing nations, Latin America, Africa, borrow heavily in dollars, then drown when rates rise. Inflation becomes a silent thief, stealing wealth from savers, rewarding borrowers. But innovation explodes, credit expands. Global trade multiplies tenfold. Banks grow powerful. Stock markets boom. Debt becomes the new engine of prosperity. It's a paradox. Freedom from gold brings both growth and instability. Each crisis, from 1987 to 2008, is patched with more printed money. Each fix makes the system even more dependent on the same illusion, confidence. By the 1990s, gold is dismissed as old-fashioned. Central banks sell it off, chasing paper profits. The metal that once defined civilization becomes just another commodity. But history never forgets. The East starts to buy quietly. China, Russia, India, loading their vaults brick by brick. They watch as America spends and prints, confident the dollar will hold. But they remember something the West forgot. Trust is powerful, but it's also fragile. When trust breaks, people don't reach for paper. They reach for gold. The 1971 decision freed the world from gold's cage, but it also cut the chain of discipline. Money could now expand without limit. Debt could grow without end. And the world, chasing growth, would never look back. Nixon's speech didn't just end a policy, it began an era of invisible money, of limitless credit, of nations built not on gold reserves, but on belief. The gold standard was over, the fiat age had begun. Decades pass. The gold standard becomes a memory, a chapter in textbooks. Most people don't even know money was once tied to metal. They just swipe, tap, send. Digital numbers replace coins, and the illusion feels stronger than ever. But deep beneath the surface, something begins to stir. Central banks start buying again. China leads quietly, building reserves ton by ton. Russia follows, trading dollars for gold. India increases its holdings year after year. Even Europe stops selling and starts collecting. It's a quiet arms race, measured not in missiles, but in metal. Why? Because history whispers the same warning. Every empire built on paper eventually faces the truth. In 2008, when global markets crashed, that truth came roaring back. Banks fell. Trust vanished overnight. People ran to gold. Its price soared, doubling, then tripling. It was as if the world suddenly remembered what value means. When the dust settled, nations took notes. The West relied on printing money. The East started stacking gold. Today, the United States still holds the largest official reserves, but China's vaults grow fast, and not all are reported. Russia keeps buying despite sanctions. Even small nations from Turkey to Poland are hoarding. The signal is clear. The world doesn't fully trust fiat anymore. If we return to the gold standard today, the game would flip overnight. America, still rich in gold, would hold leverage, but not like before. China's reserves, combined with its manufacturing might, would give it immense power. Russia, with its golden energy, would gain influence too. Nations with strong mining sectors, like Australia, Canada, and South Africa, would rise. But many others would suffer. Countries drowning in debt couldn't print their way out anymore. Deficits would mean collapse. Trade would freeze. Growth would slow. The rich would get richer. The poor, stuck in stillness. So why not go back if gold is so pure? Because purity is expensive. A gold-backed system gives discipline, yes, but it removes flexibility. It can't adapt to modern shocks, to pandemics, wars, market crashes. It can't scale with a digital world moving at light speed. And yet, deep down, people miss the simplicity. 1 ounce, one measure of truth. No politics, no promises, just value. China understands this nostalgia and strategy. By buying gold, it isn't planning to replace the dollar tomorrow. It's building a foundation, an insurance policy. If global trust in the dollar fades, gold will speak louder. Already, trade between some nations is bypassing dollars, paid in local currency, sometimes backed quietly by gold. It's not a revolution yet, but it's a rehearsal. Meanwhile, the US faces a paradox. It benefits from the dollar's dominance, but that same power makes it careless. Debt climbs past limits. Each crisis demands more printing, and every new dollar, somewhere, makes gold just a little more attractive. So the world stands at a strange crossroads. One side, endless growth built on digital trust. The other, ancient metal, steady and silent. Maybe the future won't choose one. Maybe it will blend both, digital money backed by something real again. Maybe gold won't return as coins, but as code. Because in the end, this story isn't about metal or money. It's about belief. Belief that paper has power. Belief that governments can keep their promises. Belief that the system will hold, because it always has. But belief is fragile. And history shows, when trust breaks, people don't reach for paper. They reach for gold. The story of gold isn't over. It just changed shape, from bars to bytes, from vaults to algorithms. And every move the world makes today is part of that same story. Because if gold once ruled money, now oil does. The petrodollar, America's quiet weapon since the 1970s. What happens if that power shifts east? What if China's gold rush and digital yuan are more than strategy? What if they re-preparation? History has a rhythm. Every system rises, shines, and fades. Gold had its time. The dollar had its empire. And the next chapter might already be forming in silence. So tell me, do you want to dive into the rise of the petrodollar? Or should we explore China's secret gold accumulation and what it really means for the world economy? Whichever story you choose, we'll uncover it here, piece by piece. Because money is power, but understanding it is freedom. If you want to follow every twist in this story, hit subscribe. Join the ones who see the pattern before it repeats. This is not just history. Girth your future, unfolding one coin at a time.